If you're a team leader that is feeling like you're not making as much profit as you should, this is for you. I just got off a podcast with Andy with Simple Numbers. He's been our bookkeeper for years, and I just took 2 pages of notes, and I've been working with him for probably the last 2 or 3 years. And the amount of value that he just went through in really breaking down how to run a profitable business, the things to look out for if your team is not profitable, and shared a lot of different tactical nuggets you can implement into your business. So I think you'll find this valuable. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let's get right into the episode. So I'm here today with my buddy Andy, who has been doing our bookkeeping for the last 3 years or so, and for our real estate team. And there's a couple big unlocks that we personally had. So Andy and I were talking, and we thought, hey, we have a lot of similar things that we like to talk about, and there's a big topic that we're going to cover today that it seems like nobody in the industry at all is talking about. So Andy, I'm going to give a quick kind of intro from my outsider's perspective of what you and your company do, and then I'll let you kind of correct me where I'm wrong. So Andy is the owner of Simple Numbers. You ran a really, really successful team in, I don't even know where, to be honest, but where at? Minnesota. So ran a really successful team, and then realized that there was this huge gap in the market of education around how to look at your numbers and run a profitable business from teams. So you started Simple Numbers, which is a service we've used for years, and honestly, it really unlocked me just learning my P&L and understanding what's going on. So you do bookkeeping for some of the top teams throughout the country, a lot of agents all over the place, and you help them understand how they can not necessarily just grow their business, but become more profitable. So how'd I do? How's that intro?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, bookkeeping is the thing we have to do in order to really accomplish what we set out to do, which is to help people grow a business profitably, right? And I don't know if you felt this way or not, Christian, but early in my career, I just had it was just my CPA doing my books.
Yep.
Didn't understand real estate, really didn't even understand growing a business. It was all about taxes. And that was super important, and I needed that, but I had no like actual insight into growing like a profitable business. And I even thought my business was profitable early on. Turns out if I stepped out of production, it wasn't. And when that light bulb came on, it was like, holy cow, I was totally blindsided.
Yeah.
So that's what we do now. Yes, is we do the bookkeeping so that we can help people bring clarity and confidence to the scaling and growing of their business.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect kind of intro to like when we first met. I remember hearing you on somebody else's podcast. I don't remember whose it was, but I was like, you know what? What you said right there is like industry specific bookkeeping. I was like, yeah, we always had our accountant doing the books. And the moment you said that, the very first thing you said, which I won't forget, was, yeah, the accountants just see the money that hits your account, which is gross profit, and then they do everything else from there. We'll get into the nerdy number stuff, but like, if you start with gross profit on the top of the P&L, you're kind of screwed from there, and you have a really wonky look at the business from there. So the minute I just napkin mathed our numbers looking at true top line, I was like, oh crap, there's a problem here, and I booked a call the same day. And now I find myself having that same conversation with almost all team leaders that are, if they're struggling to be profitable, that's almost the conversation we go to every time.
Yeah, and it really is. When we're just a solo agent, we can focus just on our operating expenses and our net profit. So a regular bookkeeper, who's just tracking our expenses, that can bring the clarity we need, because we aren't making a lot of these high-level business decisions, and we aren't building a business that necessarily, can run without our production. But when we shift from solo agent and we shift over to that real business owner, that entrepreneurial business owner who's looking to scale a business that doesn't rely on their production. Doesn't mean they doesn't mean they can't produce.
Yep.
We have a lot of clients who still love and will always sell real estate, but is the business healthy without it? That's where I see real estate professionals get in trouble. It's that moment where they shift from solo to business owner, and they aren't tracking that cost of sale that you're talking about.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we scale and we're like, wow, it says I'm profitable on paper, but I sure feel like I'm making less money than I did when I was a solo agent, because now I have all this team to carry along with me.
100%.
And so usually when I look at somebody's books and we calculate all of the numbers, not just the tax view, but the full business view with that cost of sale, man, I've had some tough conversations with team leaders who thought they were running a very healthy business. And it turns out they're running, actually, what I tell them, I just tell them straight up, I say, you're running a charity. You are donating your money from your production to your agents to produce. That's not a very fun place to be for very long. So that's the benefit, or the whole reason we exist, is to bring clarity to that, because I didn't have it for years. And once I had it, then my business took off and I was able to exit production and continue to grow that thing. So
Yeah.
I think it's key.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I did all of that as well too. Like I was heavily in production for the first 2 years of the team, and when I stepped out, not really realizing how much. Yeah, I figured we'd lose that production, but not realizing that all that money went really to the house, if you will. And finally did the math of like how many agents would I need in order to replace my income, and I think most team leaders do that math, and they're very surprised at how large the team is, because some people want the small team. But so one thing I thought you did very well with branding perspective is the name of the company is Simple Numbers. And the first time we sat down, as like in hindsight, I'm like, how did I not know this? But can you kind of walk through the philosophy of why you call it Simple Numbers and what those simple numbers are on somebody's profit and loss?
Yeah, right. And it is, there's a belief that I think all high level entrepreneurs understand, is that, simplicity breeds clarity. And as soon as we complicate things, it creates confusion. And when we're confused, we can't move forward and grow confidently. And without that confidence, scalability is almost impossible. Like true scale comes from clarity and confidence, and that comes from simplicity. So sometimes I'll look at people's numbers and I'll explain them, and I hear this all the time. They'll say, I've never heard it explained that way before. And it makes simple sense. So that's the idea of simple numbers. And if you think about it, there really are 5 numbers in a lot of businesses' financial models, but very clearly in real estate. Those are the 5 numbers we got to focus on. Those 5 numbers create a pie. So visualize a pie. We can look at this and look at our business visually. The pie itself is the first number. That's our total revenue. That's the amount we're not necessarily used to seeing, because it's before the broker got paid, before we were paid referrals, before we paid agents their splits, if we pay agents, maybe a third party referral like Zillow or someone else. It's the true top line. That's the pie. And then we have to cut that pie up into pieces. And there's really just a handful of pieces. The first piece is that cost of sale. That is now the amount that went to the broker, the agents, and any referrals we would have paid. That's that first piece of pie. That's the second number. The third one then is gross profit. That's what we now have left. That's the amount that would have hit our bank account as a business owner. And we now have to pay the bills from that and see what's left.
Just to interject,
There. One thing I hear in the industry all the time is I don't know if I've ever heard anybody other than you in the industry say gross profit. Everybody calls it company dollar, like how much the company keeps or whatever. And I think that just stems from either a lack of understanding it, or just like, oh, that's just how we do it in the industry. When from a team leader perspective, almost everything you do to get to gross profit is the most important. So I just wanted to make that because I think a lot of people will hear gross profit and be like, I don't even know what that necessarily means. Most people call that company dollar. But anyway, I didn't want to interject too much.
I've heard it also called real revenue, because it really is the real money you as the business owner now have to work with. But if we skip those first 2 numbers, really that cost of sale, it can, again, create a business where on paper we look healthy. But if we were to exit production as the owner, because think about it, whenever we do a deal, 100% of the dollars in most cases we generate, we keep after we pay the broker, but we don't have an agent to pay a split on. So all of a sudden the amount hitting our bank account looks pretty dang healthy. The problem is it's most of it, or a lot of it, is coming, or at least it's skewed from the fact that 100% of our commission dollars from our personal production goes into that real revenue or gross profit or company dollar number.
Yep.
So that's the third number. It's the amount that hit our bank account, is essentially the best way to explain it. And it's the money we now have to work with to pay the operating expenses and have profit. Those are the next 2 pieces of the pie, right? We already paid our, well, that was the first piece. Then we have our operating expenses. That's the money we had to spend to run the business. I break it down into 3 main categories. This is probably another big mistake I see most CPAs make. They have like 18 expense categories. So confusing. No, 3.
Yeah.
Every dollar we spend should be in one of the 3 main categories that will make up our operating expenses. Number 1, lead generation and marketing. Any dollar we spend with the intent of branding or generating opportunity for our business is a lead gen marketing dollar. Number 2 is people expenses. These would be non-agent costs, right? Like our staff, our VAs, our whoever that might be paid part of our business. And then number three is overhead. And that's just everything that isn't a lead gen marketing dollar or a people expense. Things like coaching, consulting, bookkeeping, whatever, office space, all the stuff we need to run the business. Those three categories make up our operating expenses. And then that leaves us with the third piece of the pie, the final piece of the pie, and that's your net profit. And depending on what model you're building, will determine how big each piece of the pie is. But every real estate business, whether you're a solo agent all the way up to a giant mega team, is going to have those three pieces of the pie. And the thing we got to get clear on is how big each piece needs to be for the model that you're looking to build, and then stick with that model. One of the mistakes I see people make, and maybe you've seen this too, is they'll be running one model where they have a high cost of sale, meaning they're paying the agents a lot of the split, but then they spend like they're not paying the agents much and they're overspending. And then their net profit margin is just a sliver, if it's there at all. And so that's where I see people make the mistake. If you're going to give the agents a lot of the split, that's fine. But then we have to have a smaller piece going out in operating expenses. If we're going to not give the agents as much, maybe a small SEAL team where we only have 50-50 splits or something, we can afford to spend a little more to support them and still maintain a healthy net profit. So the pieces of that pie can change depending on the model you're looking to build. The key is that we're clear on the model we want to build and that it matches and it aligns with that model economically.
Yeah, for sure. And when I'm talking with team leaders, I really break down into I see four, as far as teams go, I think there's four different teams. There's the first, and it goes from, let's say, most profitable, most control over the whole everything, basically. Most profitable, most control, to least profitable and least control, right? So on one side, it would be like the rainmaker agent. Think of the number one agent in the marketplace that's got 5 assistants and maybe 1 or 2 agents, and it's their face, their name, their everything. That person's going to have by far the most profit, and because they're doing most of the deals, they're going to have obviously the most control. From there, the second one over, and that's like the team leader obviously is in production kind of by definition. The second one over is like what I would call the traditional team model, where agents are on 50% splits or less on pretty much everything, and the team pays for everything, and the agents can come in and really just sell. And that's like that traditional team model. Team leader may or may not be in production there. I don't think that necessarily matters as long as somebody's running the business. I think that's where most people mess up, is that if you're in production on that model, on any of these models, somebody's got to run the business. So the third model is what we run, is like a teamerage. It's like you act like a brokerage, you look like a brokerage. Whether you are is not really important. But I think the difference between just a traditional brokerage and a teamerage is the team still has some general way of doing business. They do have, like, let's say, minimum standards and benchmarks and things that their agents usually hit. Most teams don't just collect licenses like we know traditional brokerage model does. And generally, there's some sort of lead generation in there, maybe a hybrid to comp model. Maybe on team leads, you pay less, and on the agent self-generated, they pay more, right? So as you move this way, everything gets less and less profitable. And then you got the brokerage model where you're competing with, all the big dogs and all the independents, where it's like, agents come on and they do whatever they want, and you have the least amount of control and least profit. And what I see is most agents go from being a rainmaker to starting a team by accident almost. And then when they get there, they're like, oh, well, my agents are going to leave me if I don't pay more money. And then they move to this teamerage model and they still pay for everything they did over here, which I think is what you just said. And that was kind of our journey until we looked at, well, hey, this actual, I call it the financial model, didn't even make sense. Like, we would have to get ginormous in order to make what we were doing before profitable. And it's like, well, is that really the best route to go forward? And I think for 99.99% of people, it's not.
I agree. And I think there's no right or wrong model, but it is truly asking yourself, what are you looking to get out of this business? I find a lot of people, they start a team to get more freedom. They're like, I need some breathing room in my life. I've got kids now, whatever it is. So I'm going to shift from solo agent to team. That's what it was for me.
Yeah.
I think the year I sold 107 homes personally. And I said, this is not going to work. Making more money than I'd ever thought possible. I drove a limousine before I got into real estate. Like, no business making the kind of money I was making in my mind. But decided this isn't sustainable long term, but I want to keep this going. So I shifted to that team. The problem is, again, if the economic model, and you call it the financial model, same thing. If it doesn't align with what I call the operating model, which is the 4 types you talked about, that's where we get into trouble. And we end up building a business that doesn't do what we originally set it out to do, which is to create more freedom in our personal life, or to put us more in like the zone we were born to be in. Like, I was not born to be in sales. I was good at it mostly because of the systems and marketing I had in place. I was more aligned with entrepreneurial mindset and that role of leading a team and being that chief evangelist. So I had to make sure the economic model allowed me to get there. And I was working just as many hours maybe in the beginning as I was in production, building this team, but I was in a seat that I was much happier in.
Yeah.
But if the economic model's off, guess what? I never get there into that seat because I'm stuck selling just to keep the lights on. And I'll tell you, it seems like, frankly, between me and you, well, not between me and you, because we're on a podcast, but it's like between me and you and the industry, like, that is the most common situation I find team leaders in, and they don't know how to get out. And I think it's because they don't understand the most important key metric in their business that, like you said at the beginning of this, our industry does not talk about. It's called your adjusted net profit. To me,
Yep.
that is truly, if we were all to be in a room, every real estate business owner were to gather in a giant conference room and compare each other's businesses. If we were to do that right now, we'd all say, well, I'm at this percent net profit, I'm at this percent net profit, and we'd actually all be comparing apples to oranges.
Yep.
Because we're not talking about the same numbers. And that's where there's so much confusion around a healthy real estate team. And the thing that they're not looking at is this adjusted net profit number. And if we looked at it, we'd be comparing apples to apples. And I bet there would be a lot of team leaders that would be like, oh man, I thought I was profitable and I'm on stage being applauded for having this huge team, and I'm not even close to where I actually thought that I was when I'm looking at it truly in the right way.
Yeah.
So that's the number I think that needs to be focused on, is that adjusted net profit. What's my profitability if I were not in production and if I were not just looking at it from a tax perspective?
Yeah. So adjusted net profit. So I'll give you my third grader version of this, and you can go the correct version of it. So adjusted net profit is you're peeling out your personal production. And if you have a co-founder or a husband-wife team, like, you pull out all of the principals, the owner of the company, pull out all of their personal production, and then you have the team. And the question is, does the team make money without your personal production? Right? Is that basically what you're talking about?
The way I look at it, though, is with the owner's production, but with the owner's cost of sale, what we call unrealized cost of sale. For example, let's say there's a team that does $1 million in total revenue. Top line, like everybody, the owner, the team, all together, if we looked at everybody's numbers together, they do $1 million in top line revenue. On paper, they have $150,000 net profit. That'd be a 15% net, right? For easy math. But that's with the owner doing some production, a lot of it, a good chunk of it. If we applied the same split they would have paid an agent to do their deals, and we now removed that from that production, or from that gross profit, then we added back in any salary the owner paid themselves, plus any what we would call indirect expenses. These are expenses that the owner's running through the business for tax purposes only. Like, they really aren't a business expense. Let's say in that same example, we would have had $200,000 of cost of sale that the owner would have paid another agent to do their deals. And let's say the owner paid themselves $100,000 in salary. So we would add that back in. And maybe they're running like 25 grand of like indirect, maybe some travel, some meals, some automobile expenses through the business for tax purposes, but it's really not a hard business expense. All of a sudden, if we did the formula for adjusted net profit, that business actually doesn't make $150,000 net like it shows on paper. In that example, they would have only made $75,000 in net. So they go from a 15 to a 7.5 when they actually look at their business through the true lens. Your profit on paper is not your true profit because it is skewed by those numbers. The production you didn't pay a cost of sale on, what you paid yourself in salary, which, by the way, for most team leaders is profit that they're just paying themselves in the form of a salary to keep the IRS happy. It's a tax thing. It's not,
Yeah.
it really is just profit.
Yeah.
And then those indirect expenses are really not expenses. And so it's making our business actually look less healthy than it is when we strip those out. So that's an example of how on paper things can look okay and in reality they're not where they need to be. And that's actually a good example. I see it all the time where on paper we're a positive. When we do the adjusted net profit formula, we're in a negative. If we stepped out of production as the owner, we'd be losing money. And we don't even see it. Why? Because we are looking at financials through the lens of only through our CPA's lens, which is a tax lens. That's it. And it's important. We need to have the tax lens, but we also need to look at it from the business owner lens.
And I was in that position. I believe it was the year before I met you, or I saw that podcast where I reached out to you guys, where I did $780,000 in GCI my second year, and the company total profit was 150 grand. And looking back, it's like, well, I just whatever that math. I'm not going to do public math, but I lit $600,000 on fire. My team lost that much money, and I kept telling I want to hear your perspective on this, because I kept telling myself, because I kept hearing this from other people, and I think this is really popularized on Instagram and all the social medias, is, oh, I just kept telling myself, I'm reinvesting into my business. I'm reinvesting into my business. And like, sure, if I would have taken all that money out in profit, well, one, the business, it wouldn't have been possible, but we wouldn't have grown as fast, sure. But like, what is your impact on, like, I'm reinvesting into the business?
Well, I don't know if you've ever read the book Profit First, but he talks a little bit about this too, is there's no such thing as profits reinvested. That's just additional expenses. We can make ourselves feel better and say, well, that I chose to reinvest the profit. My take is, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. You just overspent. Otherwise, we can always just say, oh, that's just profit reinvested. There is no such thing. That's an oxymoron. I get the idea, and the idea is different. The idea is I'm going to forego some pay in order to do that. I just think you got to be really careful about that, because the biggest trap I find for real estate agents is that they say that I'm in growth mode, but growth mode never ends.
Yep.
And pretty soon they're in broke mode. And their relationships at home are suffering, and their kids don't know them. And and that makes me upset with that idea more than anything, is we are sacrificing and making growth of our business. I'm all about money and profit, but not at the sacrifice of why we set out to get in this business in the first place, which is for our families, for our spouses, for those that are closest to us, and to have more time and freedom. And when we just reinvest all the time, it's really a slippery slope. When does that end? I believe you have to have an operating expense model that aligns with your operating model. Like, for example, I'm a big believer in 30% operating expenses, 10% towards lead gen marketing, 10% towards people, and 10% towards overhead of my top line revenue. And maintaining that and being disciplined around it and growing with that amount of profit reinvested. Because if you think about it, that is profit that I'm reinvesting. I'm expending the money. That's all that expenses are, is profit that I'm spending. And I could do it up to a certain point. I just think 30% is where you need to be. No more than that, or very close to that 30% mark. But that's where any more than that, all of a sudden, now the business relies on our production in order to pay those bills, like you felt and like I felt early on in our careers. When does that end? We're always going to want to grow. So when does that end? That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I got one really, I think, bad piece of advice when I was going through this change from somebody in the industry. And for context, at the time, I think we had 45 agents, and we were probably doing $2 or $3 million in revenue. And we had, the advice that we got was, well, hey, Christian, you're turning a big ship. It's going to take time. And I was like, oh, okay. So if it takes me a year or 2 years to fix this, that's okay. And it did take that much time. But in hindsight, like, I could have made those changes immediately. Would have been more painful faster? Yes. Would it have fixed the problem immediately? Yes. And it's like, you have to figure out that financial model. So you said 30% expenses. This reminded me of, I'll give credit to Brett Tanner here. He said this, and he starts with, what percentage of profit do you want to have first? That's like, and then I want to circle back to the profit first, because I have another. I don't even know if you remember this, but I have a story there. But anyway, he said to start with profit first. So it's like, okay, you want a 30% profit business. Cool. So you have 100%. So we just took off 30 is going to profit first. And then you're going to run another 30% expenses. Right now there's 60, right? And the only thing left is your cost of goods sold. So you have 40% left. And he looked up at a whole room of team leaders that were probably not as profitable as they wanted to be. And he said, if you guys are paying your agents more than 40% splits, there's a 0% chance you're running 30% profit margins. And it was just like, huh, so simple, so simple.
It's so simple.
And I think, honestly, I think for a lot of people, paying the idea for cost of goods sold being 40% payout to your agents is like, well, who's going to do that? And like, they do. There's a lot of team models that, as your point, if you're going to have lower splits to the agent, meaning the agent makes less money, your offer, your value has to make up for that, right? We all know the 100% brokerages that are like, yeah, pay us your fees and good luck. You know, you get what you pay for. So you just have to find in your market how that model makes sense. But I think looking at it backwards from how much profit do you want, assume 30% expenses, and then your cost of goods sold is really that you have to figure out the financial model that gets you there.
Agreed. And it needs to match with the overall operating model you're looking to build, like you said. I think where people get confused about this, Christian, because I did for a long time too, is the effect that my production then has on those numbers. So I'm a believer that we need to always look at the economic model first through the lens of I'm out of production.
Yeah.
So in other words, what would it look like if I was an investor looking to buy my business? What margin am I looking to hit? And to me, what I see the most common for all the teams we work with is that 20 to 25% net profit with the owner 100% out of production. Whether they ever actually get out of production or not doesn't matter. But the idea is we should build the model off of 20 to 25% net. Because if you can at least hit those margins, and 25 gets a little tough sometimes.
Yeah.
Maybe in that 15 to 20%, but as close to 20% as we can get, maybe a little bit more. You know, if I can't hit that, honestly, you are better off staying a high production agent with a bunch of staff and maybe some showing assistants and ISA setting your appointments. Like, you be the main producer and be highly leveraged with quality staff people all around you. You're going to make way more money in less time than if you're trying to build this team on a 5 to 8% net profit margin.
Yeah.
But that's where that 20 to 25% net comes in is I'm out of production and I'm able to hit a 20, 25% net. Because I see a lot of people say, oh, I'm at a 30. Yeah, I just had a coaching call yesterday. It was a P&L review with a client. They were at a 27% net profit. And their coach told them they should be at a 30% net profit. But they were doing 80% of the production. And they said, oh, so I'm healthy, right? I'm at that 27% net. I'm like, no. That's because we're not accounting for, we need to do your adjusted net profit. And when we did that, they were actually a significant negative. So again, the key here is that we make sure we're looking at the right numbers, because that's where there's confusion in the industry. They see somebody on stage say, I'm at a 30% net. They see they're at 27 and they say, I must be doing pretty good. No, you're actually doing awful, because if you paid the cost of sale on your production, you'd be upside down significantly.
Not to mention on just paying out that cost of sales, but I got to imagine that team leader is going to convert higher than if they handed off that lead to a different agent on the team.
For sure. Yeah, there's that to consider as well. So
I have to ask you on this adjusted net profit, do you have like a tool or a spreadsheet or some sort of freebie to give away? Because I think that everybody needs to see that.
Probably should, and I don't. What I have is a formula that they can write down. If they're listening to this right now, here's the formula. It's real simple. Again, I'm a big believer on keeping everything simple. Now, it requires you have a good set of books. That's the caveat here. You have to have a quality set of books. But here's what it would be. It would be your net profit on paper. Whatever it says in your P&L, your net profit. Then you're going to subtract what we call unrealized cost of sale. That's very simple to calculate. You just take the amount of GCI you produced as the owner, and you multiply that times what your split would have been if another agent did those deals. So for example, you did $200,000 in GCI yourself. Maybe if you had an agent do that, you're averaging 50%. So you take 50% and it would have been $100,000 in unrealized cost of sale. It's just very simple. Now you can get really detailed and you can look at the buy side versus the listing side, and you should do some of that. You could look at SOI deals versus company lead gen deals, and you can really dial in what your cost of sale would have been, or you can just do a general number to get a better idea. But it's your net profit on paper minus that unrealized cost of sale on your production, plus any owner's salary you paid yourself, if you did, plus any indirect expenses. And again, those indirect expenses, sometimes people are confused about what that is. That is an expense that you're only running through the business for tax purposes, meaning your CPA said, hey, you can run all those meals you went on, or that vacation you went on, that you stayed an extra week at that conference for, whatever. It's like anything you're running through the business. Some people run a lot, some people run none. If you've got none, then you don't add anything back in. But a lot of people run quite a bit. And we just need to add that back in because that's really profit that you paid yourself. So again, net profit on paper minus unrealized owner cost of sale, plus owner salary, plus your indirect expenses. If that number is not at least 20%, in my opinion, you aren't as healthy as you should be in your team. Again, depending on your model. Some people want a teamage model and they get that 5 to 8% net. But whatever your goal is for a net profit, if that number doesn't match or is above, then we're unhealthy. And that's the fair way to assess the business.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm 100% out of production, have been since 2022. And I did one deal this year, and it's going to be 8% of our total net profit. It's like that's a and it was a big deal, granted, but like that's a significant chunk of it. So I think this formula, it would have helped me a lot at that time. So you got to make a little lead magnet out of this thing.
Because to me, it's just super helpful, and everybody should be comparing that. Whenever someone tells you what their net profit is, I would just always ask, well, how much production are you doing? And do you pay yourself a salary? Because those are the two questions that tell you really if they understand their net profit truly or not.
Hey, really quick, interrupting the episode here. I wanted to share with you that we just hit 2,000 members in our school community here. Now, there are real estate agents, there's team leaders that are looking to grow their business, focus on sales, marketing, and leadership. And if you like this type of content, I have a ton of behind the scenes of how we are running our business, including a whole bunch of stuff in the classroom from our sales masterclass, also all my podcast lessons. So after talking to tons and tons of team leaders and business owners, all the different takeaways you can get, go to school.com/start. Link is going to be in the description as well too. If you want to join that, totally free. Check it out. There's tons of value in there. Anyway, let's get back to the episode. Or especially if somebody says margin, like I have another two topics I want to, and then I want to circle back to this profit first thing, because I think that's probably the, other than the formula you just gave, it's probably the most tangible thing that anybody can just go out and implement. But I was at a conference, Zillow conference last week, and obviously Zillow has hefty referral fees. And the person that was on stage was saying, oh, I have 60% of my business is Zillow and I have 40% profit margins. And I'm like, there's no way that that's actually true, unless you're taking your profit margin based off of a gross profit number. So when you look at it, because I had a ton of questions on this when we first started talking, how do you look at referrals when you're doing this, whether it's Zillow, Redfin, or you're paying out, you receive a ton of referrals, right? Whatever it is, referrals are referrals. How do you look at that on this P&L?
I would say overall, I look at it as long as the business owner that we're working with, the team leader, is clear on how they want to look at it and how it affects their net profit. There's one of two ways we can do it. And we do it both ways with clients. And then I'll tell you what my personal suggestion is, or how I look at it personally. One way we could do it is that we just include it just like any other cost of sale. Zillow would be a line item in your cost of sale as a referral fee, and whatever we paid them is then a cost of sale. The other option is that we literally don't include any of those dollars in your revenue, and it's not even part of your top line. You can do it either way. I believe that you should do it where we do include it as a referral cost of sale. We need to see what percentage of the total revenue is going out to Zillow. The question is why? Is because think about it this way: before Zillow Flex, I paid tens of thousands of dollars every month in Zillow fees as a monthly fee before they switched to the Flex models years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in my marketing expense dollars, right? And my goal is to be around that 10% total lead gen marketing expense number. Well, all of a sudden they switched to Flex. now that 10% goes away because I don't spend those tens of thousands of dollars every month. It might go down to like 4%. But the spend is still there. It's just paid in the form of a cost of sale at closing versus a monthly fee. But I'm actually, frankly, I ended up actually then spending more on Zillow, which was nice because I only paid it when it closed. So the risk now shifted to them. But because the risk shifted to them, they charged more for it. When I used to pay a monthly fee and took the risk, I ended up paying less as an overall expense. But here's the mistake people make. Now, all of a sudden in their head, they think, oh, well, I can spend 10% on lead gen marketing and I'm only at 4 now because I don't have the Zillow expense every month anymore. So then they go spend more to get back up to 10%. It's like, no, 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 no. You're already you're still spending that just up in your cost of sale. And so that's one of the reasons, probably the main reason is that I think we need to be tracking that. And I just think it's important to know as a general strategy, can we slowly build our team so that our dependence on these Zillow Flex deals become less over time as an overall percentage of our revenue? And if we're not tracking it, we don't know. And we wake up one day and realize, holy cow, I'm 100% dependent on Zillow for my business. And that is not a good place to be as a business owner.
Yep. So here's how I look at this right now. I want to let's circle back to profit first here. So my entire focus is growing revenue and increasing our gross margin. So meaning like decreasing our percentage of paid agents, paid referrals, paid everything. If I can continue to grow revenue and increase our gross margins, meaning basically make more money per deal, I don't want to say profit will take care of itself. We're going to explain profit first here in a second. But in my mind, because we operate under profit first, profit takes care of itself. As long as we increase revenue, as long as we increase gross profit, I don't have to worry about net profit because the margins make sense. Now, the reason for that is this book called Profit First. I'll let you explain it, but we implemented this on a third grader version when I was like, we have to fix something. And I saw this book, Profit First. I was like, sounds great. And basically what I took away from it was like, whatever you want to take on profit, just take that the second money hits your bank account, trigger an autosave, and move that into another account. Yep. And guaranteed you're going to be profitable. You're going to make yourself be profitable rather. And I needed to hear this at the time. In the book, they said, and if you're not profitable, start at like 1%. And you're going to put like dollars or pennies into another account, but at least it's there. And then the pain of moving something from a profit account to a checking account just to spend it is way worse than it just being spent in the checking account. So I had done that. We got up to like 2% or something like that, and then I just stopped changing it. And when we had first met, this is the story. I don't know if you would remember. When we very first met, you were like, "Hey, have you read the book Profit First?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, we do that." Then you were like, "Then why aren't you profitable?" And I was like, that's a great question. I don't know. And then I thought about it and I was like, oh, I'm still profit firsting 2%. No wonder we're running, 4% profit margins or whatever it was at the time. We never adjusted it. And the instant that I changed it, I was like, oh man, I got to go cut some expenses or we got to raise revenue and all these other things. So that was my experience with Profit First. What's your definition from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, same. And you're a perfect example of why it's so powerful. It's like anything, we have to have a simple system. If we systemize profitability, it's magical. But if we don't systemize it and plan for it ahead of time, it's not a surprise when the profit's not there. Because why? Because we're human. It actually has more to do with our human psychology. Yeah, it's totally that more than it is logical, right? Yep. And really, for those that don't know Prep First, by the way, we send the book to every new client. That's how much we believe in it. I run it in my own personal business. I run it in my personal life. In every business I own, we run Profit First. That's how much I believe in it because it's a system. And part of it's for profit. It's also for taxes. I remember one time I'm a big Porsche lover. I love Porsches. And I had an old 911 in my garage and I had to sell it because guess what? I forgot about taxes. Forgot about the tax bill. It's my second or third year in business. And I said, I'm never doing that again. And so it's the same idea there. But here's what it is, revenue minus expenses equals profit. That is the traditional way of looking at profitability for CPAs. It's called GAAP accounting. It's how most CPAs and things are trained to look at the business. We need to flip that on its head and say revenue minus profit, a predetermined profit amount, equals what I have left to spend on the business. And somehow we figure it out. We have to get more creative. We can't just throw money at the wall and see what sticks. We can, but only what's there before after we've already pulled out profit and taxes and some money for our owner's salary, right? There's a system for that. But I don't even since that time, I don't even think about the tax bill. I don't even think about I know what our profit's going to be every single time. And it makes running a business so much more enjoyable because it's a system for profitability. So I think, I'm sure I've got other thoughts on it too, but I feel like it's just such a no brainer to me. Here's my other thought. Bookkeeping and looking at the numbers is very important. It's what we do for a lot of people. We help them make sure their economic model is correct and there's some accountability around that. But that's reactive.
Yeah.
Profit first is on the other side of the equation. It's proactive. If we're doing that, we know this is going to be good, like you were saying.
Yeah.
So if you don't have profit first in place, that's like whether you're a solo agent or a team leader, that is where you need to go day one.
Yeah.
The best analogy he uses, I think, in the book is in America, we've become more and more obese. Why? What is the number one correlator to us becoming more obese? Plate size. That's it. Plate size. So if we want to become healthier, diet and exercise are the two things. Diet's the most important thing. Reduce your plate size, and magically you will lose weight because you're taking in fewer calories because you can only fit so much on your plate. We have these huge plates. We just fill them and then we eat it all, and we eat it clean. Smaller plate, we're eating less. The idea here is the same thing. Smaller bucket of operating expenses. We don't have all of the company money running into one account. We separate it: taxes, profit, owner pay, and then operating expenses. It's a smaller plate. Magically, we don't spend as much. It's just funny how it works.
Yeah, it is. And you had said earlier that you don't love the idea of reinvesting, and we've been running profit first now effectively for about a year and a half, and hitting those goals. And then about halfway through this year, because we had grown revenue and increased our margins, we were like way over our goal for profit. And I'm like, well, shoot, I can make a logical decision of our goals. Let's say our goal is 10% on profit margin and we're running 18% profit margins. Well, I can either increase the goal for profit and we just take more profit, or we can take that 8%, not more than that. We can take that extra and reinvest that back into the business. And that's what we chose to do. But that was a decision. The only reason we were able to get there is because we were over delivering on profit.
Yeah. And if you think about it, really all you did was you put some of the money that should have gone into your operating expense account and you put it into profit, and you're just kind of putting it back. But the whole point was you had a goal around profit, you hit it. We just ended up putting way more in there than we should have. And that's a fun place to be. You get to choose. To me, that isn't reinvesting profit. That's just putting too much in the profit bucket than we planned, and we just can move it back over freely, or at least have the choice and do what you want. The reality is you grew and ran your business off of less than you actually thought you'd have to. And that's a fun thing.
Yeah, 100%.
Everywhere. So I love it. Yeah.
So I have a couple questions for you. I'm curious. I don't actually know the answers to these, but I'm curious what you say. What are the main drivers for profit in a real estate team? If you were to talk to the team leader right now, not as profitable as they want to be, and you have some context of their business, but they don't have clean books, like what's your kind of A, B, and C, 1, 2, 3, what's your hit list for let's make more money?
Super easy. It's two places we have to look every single time. And a lot of people think, well, I just need to sell more homes. No, that's not the answer. Not the answer. The answer is hidden in one of two places: cost of sale or operating expenses. Every time, always, forever. And again, going back to if we want to get physically fit, there are two things that affect our physical fitness: diet and exercise. Real estate, we want to get financially fit. Two things that affect it: cost of sale and operating expenses. That's how simple and easy we need to make it. Yeah. And it's never failed. So the question is, which one is it, or is it both? And we look at the model you want, those pieces of pie, and say, what should it have been and what was it? Pretty quickly, we can see, oh, it's both, or it's one or the other. If it's cost of sale, in fact, that's funny you bring it up, because I've been working on this, which is like this big decision tree, and you probably can't even see it. But the point is, If profit is not where we want, it's cost of sale, operating expenses. And if it's OpEx, there's certain things we look at. If it's cost of sale, there's certain things we look at. So for example, if it's cost of sale, are we paying the broker too much? Do we have the wrong splits with our agents? And if so, is it the listing side or the buy side? Do we have too much of our business relying on those third-party referrals?
Mhm.
It's one of those three every single time. And then if it's one of them, we can dig into that specific one. So it's kind of these decision trees down from cost of sale and operating expenses, and it kind of spider webs out and we can figure out exactly where the issue is. If the books are set up correctly, it becomes really clear. I would say most common is cost of sale because people set up their splits with their agents incorrectly, where they cannot scale and grow and still spend the kind of money they need to spend to support the agent.
Yep.
And we're basically just creating an awesome situation for the agent. I'm a believer that if we get the splits right with the agent, we might think at first that, oh, no one's going to join with those splits. It's like, no, 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 no. It's not about the split. If the right agents, if we're recruiting the right agents, they'll get it. It's about the value that we're providing, like you said earlier in the conversation. And so I think cost of sales where I see most people go wrong, and it is kind of like diet in our physical fitness. It's the more impactful thing to becoming financially fit. Cost of sale, operating expenses, we can just make decisions and cut things. Cost of sale, if you get that wrong in the beginning,
You're screwed.
you kind of have to blow everything up and start over. That's not a fun place.
It's a good way to put it. So your number one way to drive profit to a business would be you'd immediately look at their cost of goods sold, how much are they paying agents, how much are they paying vendors, and you will probably find your solution when you look at that.
Yeah, you will, most likely. And I see it usually on the listing side of the business, the splits are incorrect. That's where I see it most often. Listing side, we end up setting a situation where we have the same splits on the listing side versus the buy side. But on the listing side, we pay for everything. We pay for admin, listing coordinators to leverage the agent. We pay for maybe even an ISA to set the appointment. We pay for the staging, the photos, the videos, all the stuff. And it just sucks all the profit right out of that side of the business. Really, the listing side of the business should be our profit center because we can leverage our agents significantly more with systems and people, which increases profitability. That's a little harder to do on the buy side because at the end of the day, the buyers just take more time.
Mhm.
We can't leverage them out as the agents out of that as much. They still have to go show the house, drive around town, do all the stuff. Maybe we could get them a showing assistant that would help increase profit a little bit, but the majority of our ability to generate profit is going to come on that listing side of the business. And if the splits are the same, it really makes it tough.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, especially for teams, which is most of them that do pay for everything on the listing side, which we do as well, and we were in that bucket as well.
Yeah, and then of course with that as well is a business that's buyer heavy versus listing heavy as well, because so much of the revenue goes out then when the majority of our deals are on the buy side, especially if we rely on the agents to generate that from their SOI. The
Mhm.
worst model is a model where we do mostly buyers for our team, and most of those buyers are done by agent sphere of influence because we're paying 70-80% out on those deals.
Yep.
You are losing money in those scenarios. And so it just is not a scalable model.
Yep.
But that's where I see most people struggling to scale. That or reliance on third-party referral fees or heavy-duty referral fees, and there's just not enough meat on the bone left. So
Yeah. Well, that you just probably answered my next question I had was, what is the biggest problems that you see with teams? I would say that's having the wrong. I'll give my answer, then I'm curious your thoughts. The number one I think I see is the agent or the team leader rather is running the wrong financial model. And like the line that I have with this is you cannot outwork a bad financial model. The second thing is reliance on third-party vendors with hefty referral fees and not having any control over your own individual lead gen. I personally think these two things are combined. When I look at other teams that run similar models to us, is they are reliant on third-party vendors with referral fees, and because on top of that their financial model is broken, they don't have any profit or any gross margin in order to reinvest back into the business. So that's what I see as kind of almost one problem altogether is reliance on third party, bad financial model, so that there's no money left to reinvest into marketing. But what are, other than that, like give some context on that, and then what do you think are the biggest problems outside of that for teams?
Yeah, I do think it is that. I think it all stems from the wrong mindset when we start building our team and we set up our split model. I think too often the mindset is they look at it through their own lens, which is, well, I would never join a team. I wouldn't be, I just did it myself. I became a top agent by myself. Or I don't understand why. At the end of the day, they don't see the value themselves.
Yeah.
So they don't justify the correct split model with the agent. And they say, nobody would join my team unless I give them 70, 80% of the split.
Yep.
That's fine. But if that is your mindset, you're better off staying a solo agent and just finding admin that you can pay hourly or salary to leverage you out of the low dollar per hour activities. So you have to understand the value of your team and then them being on your team. And for a lot of people, they think it's just leads. And they say, well, I don't have leads. All my business comes from my sphere. I don't pay for leads. Why would anyone join my team? That is not why agents join your team.
No.
You can go stroke a check. Anybody can stroke a check for leads. Leads are easy. Back in my day, I remember back in the day when Tiger leads just came out, leads were tough to find. And I was one of the first ones in my market to pay for leads. And people want to join my team for that reason. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah.
The real reason, or even if you're a solo agent bringing your first agent on as a partner agent, just the fact that they can be around you and see what you do. We think that that's not that valuable as the person,
Yeah.
that's the agent, but that is of huge value in and of itself. Then you add on staff and systems and technology and all the risk we take versus the agent having to take. You pound that on, all of a sudden a 50% split is almost too much to pay the agent,
Yeah.
especially if it's a company generated lead. Then if we're handing them deals from our sphere, we're handing them ready, willing, and able clients, and then on listings, we're paying for everything. Oh my gosh. On my team, we paid 30 to 35% listing splits to our agents because we generated all the deals. We did only in-office listing appointments. ISA set the appointments. I had staff prepare all the paperwork and CMAs, and then the staff would handle the whole listing until there was an offer on the table. So I had two listing agents. They were both making multiple six figures, not working with buyers anymore, but we had to build that. And so over time, you build that value, but you have to have the splits correct first before you can build the value. I think that's the other thing I see is what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do I charge the splits that are correct first and then create the value, or do I have to create the value first and then I can charge the splits? And I think it's the former. You have to charge the splits so that you can create the value. You can't create the value first because it'll come from your production.
Yeah.
So you have the money to spend, and then you feel like you can change the splits, but then you can never change the splits. And now you're stuck, providing for that team from your production. That's the trap.
Yeah. Let me. No, I agree 100%. And on that note, where somebody's in because I think almost everybody I talk to that wants to start a team, wants to grow a team, isn't really where they want to be. And I'll say not wants to start a team. I talk to a tremendous amount of team leaders that are incredible producers, and they are also trying to run and grow a team. And I ran into this that was like, do you want to go on a $3 million listing appointment, or do you want to host a training for 5 agents? It's like, I'm going to go on the $3 million listing appointment because that's going to probably make us more money. And I think agents get stuck in this. So, and I also think most agents that like selling should stay in production because it's by far the most profitable thing you can do by miles. Yeah. And I personally talk to a lot of agents about going the production partner route where you kind of marry up with an agent, you pay them a really small split, but they're getting paid on everything. Yeah. I personally like that model the most. I think had I known about that model, I don't know if I ever would have done what I've built now. But let's talk about that. Let's talk about the production partner model, and you might call it something different, but I think most solo agents should go that route, and then I'll talk about how they could build their team otherwise.
I think it can be a great transition into exiting production without it being too much of a damper on profit, right? So it's kind of a slow burn towards that. I just stepped out of production because I remember I was at a listing appointment. I got peed on by a dog, and I was like, that's it. That's the last listing appointment. So for me, it was just like a flip of a switch. I don't care about profit. I'm done.
That explains the listing appointments in the office.
100%. Yeah. I was like, that's it. We're doing this in the office. They're coming to us. And we were in a pretty small market, so it's easy to get them to come. But
That's funny.
but I think that the production partner can help us transition. I believe that if an agent wants to stay in production and they enjoy it, they should at the very least exit the buyer side of the business. They should not work with buyers anymore, and they should focus on that listing side, and they should build that listing side as efficiently for themselves as they can, meaning somebody else is doing the prospecting for them, somebody else is setting those appointments, prepping them for the paperwork. They just show up like a surgeon,
Yeah.
make the cut with the scalpel, and then they're back out, and someone else professionally handles everything else at a lower cost than if I were to split that with an agent. So staff and salary type people as much as we can. And then leveraging AI and systems technology to do as much of the low dollar productivities as we possibly can, even instead of a staff person. Because once they do that, they now don't rely on their agents on their team to generate listing opportunities. They've now created a machine over here that generates listings for the company that they're taking. I can easily at any point plug in another agent to do those deals for me at 30, 35% split, maybe even less. The agent loves it because they get to live a lifestyle that you built for them. That's a listing agent lifestyle. Imagine being able to get into real estate, never having to work with a buyer and making really, really good money. You don't care if it's 30 or 35%.
No.
All you have to do is show up for the listing appointment and negotiate the offer when it comes in. Systems and people do everything else for you. I had people begging to be in that role on my team because it was such a good thing, but I built it for myself first.
Yeah.
By the way, then if an agent leaves, guess what? You just plug somebody else in.
Yeah.
But to me, that's how I would be shifting. I'd first get out of that buy side with the right splits, only work with high dollar buyers, eventually handing all of those over while I'm building that listing side. That way, personally, my income stays high enough for me to feed me and my family. But I'm building a system that I can easily replace somebody else in and pop them in there pretty easily and still maintain very healthy profitability. So,
yeah, 100%. I got one more question for you, and then if you have any closing remarks. But my question is, if you were to restart a team right now, what model would you go with?
Boy, that is a good question. I don't know. Part of me is like, I don't know that I've sold my team in 2018, and so I would never do it again.
Sure.
And they're done that. Now I love helping other people do that. But if I did, I don't know that I would build it any different than I did before. I was in a mid-sized small market, 100 to 150,000 people, right? So I was never going to have a business that had 50, 60 agents in it. If I was in a large metro, maybe that's the route I would go, more the model you're building with that team ridge.
Mm-hmm.
My market, that SEAL team is it accomplishes two things. It allows me to exit production and still maintain a high dollar profit on a low total revenue. My team did a couple $1 million in total revenue every year in a small market selling 300 homes a year. I was 100% out of production and I could maintain a 25 to 30% net profit. That's such a sweet spot for me in my market. So that's why I would go that route. For someone who loves production, I would go that first route you talked about, which is that kind of call it shark in the feeder fish, where I just have leftover agents taking the deals I really don't want to do. And I'm just focused on those that I like doing with people I want to work with. And then those are highly leveraged with staff people. And then if I was in a huge metro market or a larger market like you, I think you can have more impact even at a lower profit margin with a large team ridge type model. And I've seen it work with all different models. Again, the key is, which model do I want? Does it serve my purpose for me personally? And then does my economic model match it? If those two things are in place, any model can work.
I also think too, when people ask me that question, I first ask like, well, what is your goal for profit? Like, how much money do you want to make? Whereas the fastest way to make a business that profits $1 million a year is probably not the same business as if you want to make $10 million a year. And I think that's a big, like, what are we trying to accomplish here? Is kind of almost required at that point. But
and what is more important, time or money freedom? Because both are important, but which one, if you had to choose one, which one's more important? Because if it's money freedom, we probably need to do more of the solo agent type model. If it's no, I'm personally money fine, I'm looking more for time freedom now, we probably want to go to the other side of the spectrum there.
Yeah. Well, cool, Andy. Where can people find you, and any closing thoughts?
Yeah, if anybody, there's good stuff we have on our website at simple-numbers.com. We have a vlog where I'm constantly adding more thoughts on things and things I'm seeing in the industry and trying to help people understand how they should look at their P&L differently than they maybe currently are with their general bookkeeper. And that's at simple-numbers.com, simple-numbers.com. And obviously, if people need help with bookkeeping, we'd love to do that. But really, the goal there is to continue to educate.
Yeah, well, we're a huge case study. I refer you to pretty much anybody I talk to, and it was. I just go back to what I said early on. Is like there was just this light bulb moment for me when we first talked, where I had heard some other stuff. I had read Profit First. I had like some of the pieces of learning how to get more financially literate. I think is a really simple way to put it. And then when we sat down and like really rehashed all of our numbers, I was like, I see the problem. We're going to spend the next 3 years fixing this. And it was, I'm glad we have, because we have surpassed, I think we're farther than we would have, well, we're certainly farther than we would have been if we had not fixed those problems. I think I would have been in a different industry if we hadn't fixed those problems. But yeah, I just can't say enough as far as a case study of, if you're not gonna hire Andy, at least learn the numbers and go fix whatever it is you need to fix in the business. But I always appreciate talking.
Yeah, likewise. I was gonna say they can download our chart of accounts right off of our website, and they can have their bookkeeper do what we're doing, right? If they really would want to. So that's there. We share everything we do and how we do it. Um, so it's all there on the website. But
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big proponent of showing what it looks like to work together before we even have to book a call or have a conversation or certainly pay any money. So I love that as well too. But Andy, I appreciate your time, and this was fun. Is anything good? Anything else you want to add in there?
no, I think that was awesome. I just appreciate, not enough people are doing what you're doing and helping people understand how to run this thing like a real business. I don't see people come from the high level production you did and make that shift to true entrepreneur, business owner mindset. So I just think there's such a lane for you to continue to do what you're doing. And I know that's why you're doing it. You see the opportunity too. And
For sure.
the opportunity to have impact, I know, and that's what drives you. But it's like, man, you just I just appreciate that you look at it that way, because I think that's the whole purpose of business.
Yeah. Yep.
How's
Yeah.
dad life, by the way? Are you getting time at home and freedom and feeling like you're
You know what's cool is I think the timing couldn't have been better, and I was able, the first 2 weeks I just took completely off, didn't look at my phone for 2 seconds, even though the whole delivery day I was on a disaster of a problem at work, but was totally off my phone for 2 weeks, which was amazing. And the next 2 weeks I was like 10, I think I did my meetings and that was it. I think I did my 3 meetings a week, 10 hours for the next 2 weeks, and then slowly kind of ramped back into it. But I think I'm down. I was actually, do you follow Alex Ramosi at all?
a little bit, yep.
We went to his workshops, and I was walking through the hallway, and somebody's like, I don't even like to ask how much revenue, how much whatever. The guy's like, I always just ask people how many hours a week do you work? And I was like, that is such a good question for that like entrepreneur grinding kind of room. And I was like, I'm working like 40, 50, like 50 hours a week, maybe 60 on a really rough week right now. He was like, dude, you're basically retired. Good for you. Like, what now? Now he's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
But it's funny because like if somebody would have asked me that 2 or 3 years ago, it's like all of them, 100 hours a week, like, and making less money. It's like, I think just the unlock of the financial model for us was huge. And then, as to your point, is we just see this massive opportunity in the market, and it's just taken everything in me to not get distracted in doing anything else.
Right. And I can see that, like, your ability to brand and market yourself. It just seems like agents, especially more now than ever, need a leader to guide them. And that's what I see that you're doing with these agents, is you are truly see the meetings you're doing. I see the value you're bringing to agents who are just kind of lost.
Yeah.
And there's tons of them out there, you know? And so, yeah, that's pretty, it's multifaceted. It's like, yeah, you're building your own brand and business, this team, but like, you're also becoming this agent or this leader of all these agents. And then you're also helping other people see it like a business. And so I just think, it's gonna be fun to watch what you do. And I appreciate that you put your family as the most important thing in front of all that. So,
Yeah,
so
for sure.
you're doing it right in my book. So if we can do anything else to help, I appreciate you taking the time to do a call together.
No, you guys have been great. I chatted with, was it Amber? Is that her name? About we're opening a second office coming up, and just trying to mentally prepare for what that is going to look like. But she was super helpful, and it was way easier than I was thinking. So,
Okay, good.
Yeah.
If you need any thoughts for me on that, let me know. But she's really good, and she's smarter than we are when it comes to like the tactical bookkeeping stuff, right? Like she knows QuickBooks in and out, all the tools, how to do it, the right way to do it. She's been doing it for like 30 years with tons of different types of businesses. So that experience has been good for us. So as you know, it's all about getting the right people around you, and she's good.
100%. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it again. Good to talk.
Absolutely. All right. I'll talk to you later. So that was the interview with Andy. We just finished up. I took a ton of notes. I hope you found value from it. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe this video. And I made this video next that I think you'll really enjoy as well too.